Welcome to this live session on Learners Connect, Bridging the Gaps in EdTech with Conversational AI. Customers want a seamless experience, starting from the point of discovery to post-sales service. They want a quick turnaround for their queries with a relevant response across all channels. Today, delaying a customer response or not responding to them is no longer a solution because it can turn into a social media disaster, hurting the overall brand reputation. So, in order to reduce the turnaround time, give a relevant response, and engage with all customers, brands are now investing into technology to seek solutions. They are deploying conversational AI or chatbots to drive engagement with their customers. These chatbots are quick, simple, effective, and create a seamless experience for the customers. Brands across all industries are using it. But today, our focus will be on the players across the EdTech sector. We'll try to figure out how they are leveraging this conversational AI to solve their challenges at all levels. We'll also talk about how chatbots reduce the workload for administration, how inquiries from students and customers can be handled better, how varied requests from customers can be handled better, and at what stage a human intervention is needed. Today, there is no doubt that the EdTech is the future of the education, and the sector saw a massive growth during the pandemic. Currently valued at $700 to $800 million with approximately 90 million users, the sector is expected to touch $30 billion in the next decade. EdTech brands and players have already started to ramp up their services and technology to cater to this increasing demand. So now, without wasting any more time, let us hear from the industry stalwarts on how they're using conversational AI and how they think it can play a key role in the growth of the entire sector. I now welcome my panelists for the day. My first panelist is Mr. Brijesh Karia, COO, Singhania Education Services Limited. Welcome, Brijesh.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. Thank you. My next panelist for the day is Mr. Naveen Mandava, co-founder of ClassKlap. Welcome, Naveen.
Thank you, Devesh. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. My next panelist for the day is Mr. Srinivas B. Vijayaraghavan, Vice President Marketing, Gupshup. Welcome, Srini.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hi. My next panelist is Mr. Ashwini Jain, CEO and co-founder, Foreign Admits. Hello, Ashwini.
Hi, Devesh, and hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Thank you. My next panelist for the day is Mr. Anil Mammen, Chief Learning Design and Impact, Tata ClassEdge. Welcome, Anil.
Thank you, Devesh, and thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And my last panelist for the day is Mr. Vivek Jain, Chief Business Officer, Shiksha.com, Naukri Learning and Naukri Fast Forward. Welcome, Vivek.
Thanks, Devesh, and pleasure to be part of the session.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a really honor, to have all of you with me. So, let's begin the day. The first question is, EdTech category is, increasingly growing, and, there's a lot of interest. So how much volumes, have increased in last 1 year, especially since the beginning of the pandemic? I'll begin with you, Ashwini, first.
Hi, everyone. So if I have to talk about the education, so foreign admits is mostly a subset of an, EdTech industry, and we are mostly into the higher education sector. So when the COVID started, then initially, it was a fear among a lot of students as well as their parents also, like, hey, the international borders are shut and, how students are going to travel and everything. So initially it impacted our business a little bit, but then over the period of time, universities took some preventive measures, they started, taking classes online. They shifted their lab courses to, next weeks. They started running chartered flights also, on a domestic level, domestically, so that students, can travel from the international airports to the universities easily. So they took a lot of measures so that, students can feel better. They can, they can have a peace of mind. Okay. And then over the period of time, we have basically seen that, more and more students are interested, because in this pandemic period, universities have reduced their tuition fees, number one, right? And number two, they have, reduced their requirements, like, by giving test waivers, like there is no GRE requirement, there is no GMAT requirement. And when students here, okay, then more and more students come, forward to pursue their higher education dream. So in the last one to 1.5 years, we have seen a good amount of requests from our student side.
Interesting, interesting. Brijesh, what was your experience, during the pandemic, and how, I would ask, like the inquiries have increased, for online education.
Right. So basically, yeah, so I've been in the sector for last 21 years and been a teacher myself. So one good thing that I've noticed here, especially when we interact with schools and principals, the disruption has come on its own. So earlier, if you go to a school, you had to explain why to use technology. Now you have to go and explain which type of technology to use. So, basically people have understood the importance of technology.
Right.
Last 2 years, everybody has realized that when schools were closed, the tech companies came to the fore, started helping the schools, training them. I'm sure many schools have learned from many companies on how to use this. Right.
Correct.
So yes, tech is the need of the day, is what has been proven in the last 18 months to 24 months, which has been absolutely fruitful for the sector in terms of technology. Yes, it's been tough for the students, and the teachers as well. But yes, in terms of volume, it's been phenomenal. We launched our app in April this year, and we have seen already 150,000 users come to the app for learning various courses. So it's been very good in the terms of adaptation, in terms of usage. It's been fantastic so far.
Interesting, interesting. Naveen, what has been your experience?
Well, to put it in a summary, there was we have a learning app. We work in the K-12 school space. There was a time, when our teacher app wouldn't be allowed to use by the teachers, because you cannot take the mobile into the classroom. That's how it used to be. And overnight, when the COVID happened, the classroom had to come onto their mobile. That was a seismic change that happened, and in the particular space. So yes, once COVID happened, like Brijesh mentioned, there was a huge disruption that happened, and their assessments, classes, everything had to move online. So even our current schools, as well as new schools, all of them are looking for, how do you make the shift to online? Whereas earlier there was a reluctance, here there was, pretty much, they were falling head over heels, how to make sure that, the operations, run seamlessly and they do not get disconnected there. So yes, there was a tremendous increase in the number of queries, and like, probably it's a cliche to say by now, but COVID has pretty much accelerated, at least by 5 years, the whole technological disruption part. So yes, if you zoom out over 30,000, 35,000 feet, in a way, it has helped the acceleration happen on the technology front.
Correct. So Vivek, do you think, have people adapted to the online way of education? Especially, in the last 2 years, when, it has become a norm. Okay, so have people adopted that? This will be the way for the future?
So I think just to add here from Shiksha point of view, Shiksha is more course and college selection platform. And so we get a lot of students who come and visit us every day. And then essentially, if you look from a COVID point of view, we have seen phenomenal growth in number of students who have started visiting us from researching their colleges and course option. The main trigger has been a shift away from the offline channels, more like educational sort of camps, and those things have actually been replaced by more online methods of communication. We have seen obviously webinars by universities and colleges pick up. And then our close partnership with some of these colleges and universities has helped that we have a far richer information available for students to research and figure out what is right for them. So that trend has accelerated. Plus, I would say is that there is also on the study abroad side, and my friend Ashwini was referring from a foreign admits point of view. So we also have a study abroad arm, and our experience was very similar. During the first lockdown in April 20, we saw a steep dip, but then we have seen a very strong rebound last year, and we have sort of crossed all our milestones on study abroad student enrollments, and the market is looking far, far more attractive than it has ever been. And there is also geopolitics at play, with India being a favored sourcing destination, right, from universities and colleges, versus the Chinese students coming down as from outbound activity. Indian students are replacing them. So study abroad, definitely there is a huge tailwind when it comes to students looking at options abroad, and our platform helps them figure out what is their right choice in terms of both college and courses. We have seen huge tailwind both in domestic as well as in study abroad part of the business.
Interesting. Anil, what was your experience, during the last 2 years? I mean, when the entire the offline education was shut and, the students had to go online. So what was your experience during that time?
Yeah, so we have at Tata classes, we have both the B2B as well as the B2C offering, right? So it's traditionally, so we have this product called ClassEdge. I mean, that's a company name itself. So Tata ClassEdge is a school-based solution that's been around for more than a decade now, and it has associated products as well, including like assessments and other things. And we have a B2C offering which we only launched last year, in fact. So there's a new one. It's called Tata Studies. That's the one behind me. So there's a huge number of inquiries on both sides, but it's very different. So what I'd say is, for something like ClassEdge, our traditional offering, what happened is that's when big shift happened, right? Because you moved from offline schooling to online, and so most demands requirements came in terms of the platform that they need to run, to have that interaction with students, like your Zoom, for instance, right? So it's better that if you have a proprietary platform for the schools. That's one. Second, of course, is the biggest thing is assessments. So how do I take my regular assessment that I do in school online? Because there's always the trust factor with the children will copy, and how do you do it? So proctored assessments and various types of assessment formats. So those are some of the biggest demands that side. And as far as Tata Study is concerned, it's a new product. So it is a self-study product, and it's very distinctly different from lots of the things that is available out there, because we have designed it based on a principle called the science of learning. It's based on empirical evidences that we've gathered based on how students actually learn, the habits. So it's also a habit forming platform. So huge uptick over there, in fact.
Interesting. It's very evident, all five of you have mentioned that, that post-COVID, I mean, there has been a lot of inquiries, and the number of people visiting your platforms is quite high. And more number of people are looking at, either looking at selecting which colleges, subscribing to multiple courses, and, how to study abroad. So Srini, I want to come to you on this point of time. It's very evident that, EdTech is getting a lot of, as, education is going online, there's a lot of interest from audiences, both parents as well as, students who can identify a career for themselves, and identify the right courses for themselves. So how, in managing those inquiries, bots and conversational AI is helpful, and how, I mean, it can reduce the, how it is helpful and how it can, help them in managing better.
That's a great question, Devesh. So I think, first of all, education EdTech is a very, very broad ecosystem. I mean, there are various subsegments, as we all know. But I also believe that as compared to many other industries, it is one of the most consultative when it comes to creating an experience, either for a student or a parent or a working professional looking to upskill themselves. So therefore, the back and forth and the questions and the quality of engagement has to be at a very high level. So we are seeing three broad trends. I think one is where bots and conversational AI is playing a role. One is discovering the right educational product for you, whether you're a parent looking for your kid, or you're a working professional, or you're a college student. Choosing that right course or right university or right degree, that is a very big use case that's coming up when it comes to the companies that we work with. The second one is the whole student or the learner experience. Like how can you sort of use messaging apps and bots as an effective mechanism to make sure that whoever is signing up can actually start learning, and you can deliver timely nudges for them to, let's say, revise some portions or prepare for a test or take an assessment and all of that. And the last part is the support part, where again, like I said, the call, like unlike if you compare it with, let's say, D2C, where you might ask a question like, where is my package? In the education sector, your questions will be a lot deeper. Like, I'm not understanding this concept. Like, how do I learn this? Or, I'm using your app, but I'm not able to figure out how to configure it this way. So can you help me out? So these are the kinds of questions and the use cases that the EdTech companies that we work for are leveraging bots and conversational AI for. So pretty much through the spectrum.
Interesting, interesting. I think all of us in this room would agree that, when we were all studying, I mean, like, we couldn't imagine, I mean, like, the education could be, done this way, where we can ask an app, that, we're not able to understand this, how we can configure it, or like, this is concept I'm not understanding. It was only the classroom learning that was possible, one-on-one with the teacher. Pretty interesting. Thank you, Srini, for that answer. So, Vivek, I'm coming to you, taking on from Srini's point. I mean, like, what has been your experience, with the chatbots? So what are the generally questions that come to you on the bots? Is it only the inquiries or the students asking that? What are those kind of questions that are coming?
So I think as Srini was mentioning, the educational space can become fairly complex in terms of the depth and the nature of the queries. So one of the challenges in a chatbot space, if you're implementing a simple decision tree based chatbot, technologically, it's not really that challenging. The problem comes when you actually start understanding the intent of the user during the conversation, and that intent can become complicated in the space that we operate in, because you have almost like 40,000 colleges, you have some 1,000 exams, and then each college, when a student is researching, there can be some 20 different intents that the person is chasing at any point in time. And some of the questions can be fairly complicated, which is involving multiple intents, and there are clauses and then ifs and buts, right, which can actually make the job of understanding the intent much harder. So when we looked at chatbot for Shiksha, I think the biggest challenge that we had was that this is not going to be a decision tree based kind of a chatbot. It has to be something more like an assistant, which is saying I can have any natural language query which can come, and I'm deciphering what this context of the query is, and then also discovering the intent of the user, and then finding the right answer. So from a technological point of view, it was a steeper challenge for us to find a solution. And fortunately, we had something which was good solution internally developed by the technology team, which was like more like a demo solution. And then we went live with it, which was like a big risk that we said. And then the reason why we took the risk was simply because these products cannot be done in isolation. So you can't build a product like a conversational assistant in a lab. What you need is to put it in the market and then actually refine the product. So our experience has been very good here, because what we are now able to do today is we get about 500,000 sessions every month in which Shiksha Assistant interacts with the student. Now, we also had a community of questions and answer before we went live with Shiksha Assistant. And that community had answered about 600,000 questions over a period of 2 years. And here you have 500,000 questions, 600,000 questions being answered in a month. So there is a huge scale that we could build. Plus, a lot of these questions are repetitive.
Absolutely.
But the bigger challenge which I see in India is that we are now having multilingual queries. So we have a mix of Hindi coming in. We have misspellings coming in. And the moment you combine Hindi with misspellings, the technological challenges become really, really hard. Even though I'm glad that we have solved part of it, but we are looking at solving much more. But it is not a trivial thing to do all by yourself. I'm fortunate that we have a very strong technology team in Shiksha, and they have just stepped up, and they've been able to deliver spell correctors and understanding English, which is really awesome in terms of the kind of experience we can deliver. And then we said that it is not just enough to have people asking questions and getting their answers. We also need to know how good are these answers, right? What is my feedback? So we built in a very strong feedback loop there, which is saying we are also asking the students during the conversation, did you find the answer relevant? Now, that's been our gold metric from a conversation point of view. And what we have seen is we have been able to now take it to about 70-75% positive feedback on the answers, even though that's not the best state to be in. My ideal goal will be somewhere in 80-85% positive feedback range. But the challenge is manifold. One is we may not have understood the intent of the student. when we are answering the query. The second challenge could be maybe the presentation of the answer is not correct. Maybe the third problem could be just the information is not available with us. The question is coming, which I don't have an answer. I mean, this is like, it's not in part of my DB at all. So I can't really service the customer. But then the question is, can I fail gracefully and maybe handle the query in a different way?
Very interesting.
But I'll not really take too much of time. I can come back and answer more queries here. But that's been our experience here.
You have brought in a very, very interesting point, about, how multiple languages are there, what is the right content, availability of the right content, how to judge whether the answer is right or not. So Ashwini, coming on to that, coming on to you, you are receiving, I'm sure, a lot of queries from across India. So how much of a role vernacular is actually playing in this segment? How much of a role, you get queries where, somebody might be talking in Marathi, somebody might be talking in Malayali, and they are typing in, to the bots in their own languages, and which is absolutely, India has 22 official languages. Okay. So how are you, is your bot trained well enough to handle these queries in the vernacular formats?
So Devesh, frankly speaking, like as Vivek mentioned that these chatbots can be divided into two parts, right? One is basically decision-based, right? Decision-based tree, and another one is complex, right? And as we already discussed that these complex bots are difficult, right? So we haven't actually, implemented because we learned from the mistakes of, like other companies, right? That is the first management mantra that, don't repeat the mistakes, that other companies have made. Okay, learn from the mistakes of those. So for me, what is most important is customer experience. Okay. And that is why what we are doing is, we have divided into two parts. Okay. One is implement the decision based, right? And at the same time, when it is not possible, then involve the human, intervention. Okay. Human assisted. It should be human assisted. Just for an example. Okay. Like let's suppose if you call Amazon, okay, on the customer care, they will pick your call, and on the other side there will be another person who will be able to assist you, right? And your customer experience will be far much better. But on the other side, think about another company where you have to basically put, select dial 1, dial 2, dial 5, dial 8, and then for the first 5 minutes you will be just sitting there and doing nothing, right? Okay, let's suppose if you are making $1,000, if you are making, like 1,000 rupees per hour, or 5,000 rupees per hour. Okay, you just wasted 500 hours, okay, of time value of money. Okay, so frankly speaking, I'm not a big fan of that. Okay, technology should be, there to assist people. Okay, it should not make the job, harder. Okay, so that's why we implemented the decision based. Okay, first of all, and then next level is basically involve the human. And that's where the customer experience becomes much better.
Okay. Okay. Brijesh, I want to come to you on, Ashwini has mentioned a very interesting point. At what stage does a human need to take over from the bot? Okay. So you have your platform Quest Plus was launched a year and a half ago, and, and you have a sizable subscriber base. Okay. So how are you, looking at, when inquiries come to you from either from the customers, either from the students, how do you decide? And, at what level, this should be handled enough only by a bot, or it should transfer to a care agent?
Yeah, so basically what we are doing is we are basically using these chatbots as a virtual agent, wherein the inquiries come in from the different channels that we have: mobile, web, browser, voice, etc. And then we are basically trying to analyze what are the patterns of questions that are coming in. That is on the marketing front. And secondly, a very interesting thing that we're doing with the bot, which is still in the beta version, is on a product discovery mode. Because students, when they log into a particular course, the course is so huge and they want to study a particular topic sometimes, So suppose if there's an exam happening tomorrow and I want to ask a particular question in linear equations, how do I find it? Because in a particular course, it is designed in such a manner that there's a subject, there's a chapter, topic, subtopic, and then a module. So basically, we are using bots where you put in your voice and then basically try to help the students. So these are the two channels that we are using. On the question that you asked on the manual intervention front, it is more on the sales side, when it basically comes to a buying option or asking questions about the pricing of a particular product. That is when the manual intervention comes in, is what we are doing. And on the product front as well, we have got something called as a query box, where the students can usually ask their questions, ask their doubts. And if it is a very relevant and a pertinent question, a teacher usually gets in touch with the student, and then they have a manual interaction after that. So this is the two ways that we are using the manual intervention, one on the academic front, and one is on the inquiry and the sales front.
Interesting, interesting. So Naveen, coming to you, I mean, what has been your overall experience with the chatbots, and can you actually kind of elucidate with the kind of results that you have been able to manage with the, deploying of the chatbots?
Sure, I can share that. But just to back up a bit, so we are in the business of personalization in the K-12 school space, which means, we provide extensive personalization for a student and across the multiple subjects, across the learning journey, and that has been. Now, with the COVID, with the onset of COVID, what has happened is that schools also wanted to manage their own OS part and all, because everything has moved online. And so initially, schools wanted, okay, I just want a Zoom, I just want something patch or like that. But then they realized that to set up a timetable using Zoom is not easy and all. You need to have its accompanying software at it. Correct. So we launched our 21st century OS with UFS, who we have merged with. We launched the 21st century OS, where the focus is again on personalization part. Now, what we are doing as part of the 21st century OS, which has probably been launched in schools, there's a hybrid approach that we are using. We understand right now that there's a lot of, like Ashwini pointed out, there's a lot of decision tree oriented, chatbots that are out there. And we know that the experience is narrow, it's limited for now. So we put in a hybrid experience where we have a human agent as well who addresses the queries. As well, we have a basic chatbot which helps us understand, okay, what kind of queries are coming up, which can be automated as we go ahead. The idea is to learn from this so that more and more can become automated as we go ahead. So that's one part. For me, as part of the product part, there are two things that I think of as a technology, as a chatbot. The first one, think of it as a butler. I ask them to give me tea, and then the person gives me tea, and that's a butler approach. But we want to move towards a friend approach. A friend realizes that you would want tea beforehand, or a good wife, if I may say, and she'll give you tea even before you ask for it. And so we want to move from a butler to a friend, or in more tech language, we want to move more from a reactive to a more proactive approach. So in case of a student right now, we have a mechanism where students can ask, okay, I'm not clear of this doubt, can you explain? So that means some video comes up and helps and explains them. But we want to move to a stage where if the student has not performed well in a test or something, or has not answered a quiz question well, these questions, these nudges will come up automatically to the student. Okay, maybe you should revise this chapter, and that's when the magic of the power of conversational AI will come in place. Is moving more towards like a friend who is helping you in need, who is understanding you through your learning journey, understanding and helping you power more and more. So as part of the product roadmap, we are still in the early stages. We are setting up in a lot of in terms of the service part. We are in a lot of butler approach and working a lot on the more the friend approach that's there. And I'm sure as the tools really mature and we go ahead and all, we'll move towards the friend, where almost conversational AI is in the background. They're not typing something. It's like a friend coming and helping you with nudges through your learning journey, as well. Even for the school leader also, they also know, okay, what kind of problems are being proactively being supported on. So that's to give you a sense of the roadmap that we are on.
So this butler approach, how much it has been able to help you in achieving the operational efficiency?
Yeah, so it has helped definitely, but like we pointed out, some of the complex use cases, what we found, the more the complex use case and the more high stakes in terms of time it's there, then you need to have a human intervention. I will give an example. So there are exams going on in a school. When exams going on is one of the most top priority areas. A school leader won't sit down and do chatting and all and wait for the let's say some issue with the question or anything. They won't use the chat and they would want to speak to a person as early as possible. So over there, we have the human agent who is there. But for something like, for example, have these books been delivered or not, or these found the way that they are, these kind of students and all, and how long have they been absent? What's the performance? And those you can do a lot more, chatbot based, which has really been helpful so far. But much more complex task and the more high stakes time taking is, we are still using the human agent. And the idea is that even with the kind of pattern that we see in these queries with the human agent, we will start pushing them more towards the chatbots, more towards conversational AI as we go ahead.
Interesting. Anil, coming to you, I mean, you've heard every one of them, and it's kind of interesting that how chatbots have been driving a lot of efficiency, bringing in a lot of operational efficiency, for the EdTech players. I want to probably understand from you, at what stage you think should a brand go and deploy a chatbot, so that they can draw the benefits from it.
Yes, Devesh. So, of course, chatbots are excellent when it comes to regular queries related to things like product offering, pricing, features, and so on. So I'm talking at the inquiry stage. Okay, I'll come to the learning bit a little later. So and we do. I mean, even for Tata study, we do make use of it for this basic purpose by integrating these features with WhatsApp. Some of these conversational AI features with WhatsApp. However, in education, parents have a lot of queries which are very specific to the child. And so sometimes they may want the customer experience person to speak directly with the child. And at this instances is where human intervention becomes really critical for us. So overall, there's some healthy skepticism at this stage is good, is what I would think. And in our case, to begin with, we're talking about children between the ages of 5 and 18, right? So here bots could perhaps have a very, very focused function. I agree with some of the speakers who've spoken about this. It's about answering queries. So we need to be very clear that children understand that it's a bot to begin with. Okay? There shouldn't be any deception. Of course, the bot can be friendly, but they should know that this is not a human friend, this is a bot friend. Okay? And it's also preferable that younger kids interact with conversational AI only in the presence of parents. Because conversational has a very different meaning altogether. In fact, that's why I'm not very comfortable with the phrase conversational in the context of AI, because it has a very different meaning in learning. So you take we refer to this method of instruction called Socratic method. I think you're familiar with it. It's a conversational method of instruction. Here the teachers help students find the answers to a question through a natural conversation, which is what Socrates actually used while teaching his students while teaching his students to raise the right philosophical queries and find answers by themselves. So these conversations could meander, and some of the questions may not even have a single answer, especially in things like social sciences. But when it comes to bots, the conversations are almost set up like command and response, at least in most of the cases I have come across so far. But it does serve a focused or narrow function, that of helping students find the answers where clear answers exist in a friendly conversational tone, as in the case of, let's say, in math or any factual knowledge, like scientific, geographical, or historical facts. So even knowledge nuggets outside of one's school syllabus, and that's a clear value add. Or even helping students and parents with matters of school administration, admission procedures, and so on. So if you're given an option between reading an FAQ and conversational AI wins hands down without a doubt.
Srini, I want to bring in you at this point. Like Anil mentioned that, a bot, from what I understand from his answer, is that, a bot cannot be a teacher because, for example, it can be a social science subject or it can be a mathematics subject where a query can be answered in multiple ways. And a teacher can do that. Do you think that bots, can take up that role, maybe a developed bot can take up that role, as we go along, where, where a bot can answer that, there are when a student asks a query that, this is my query, I did not understand this. And it shows him 3 possible ways of looking at that answer from that, or how we can, look at, developing or, making the bot more intelligent, that it's not a command and answer format. It's more like a conversation, and as like a teacher, it's teaching them.
No, I think that's a fair point. And I don't believe that whenever we build bots for any workflow across industries, there is always at some point in time, an agent, hand over to what we call as a live agent in a generic term. So it could be a teacher, or it could be a support person, or anyone. And so is the case with EdTech education as well. So, and always there is going to be a structured approach to handling FAQs and even more complex queries. But now even conversational AI models have improved so that even more complex queries can be handled. But at no point do we believe that it will completely substitute teacher, let's say in a classroom. But I would say that these are all ways to augment and add to the whole learning experience. Like, see, for example, I ran marketing for Pluralsight, which is a tech company focused on technology skilling. And we entered the market when classroom training was the only method of skilling in a lot of tech companies around India. So the biggest inertia was, okay, if we go online, we'll lose the classroom experience and all of that. But the way you architect the product, the way you build the learner experience, what we eventually found was that a lot of companies were actually using them in tandem. Like they used online for certain things, and they used the classroom time or even a virtual classroom time, which is human to human interaction, to augment what was happening. So similarly, the same will also happen with bots, where you will use bots for certain tasks or certain parts of a workflow. And then the humans or the teachers in physical classrooms or virtual classrooms will be there. So that's how it will eventually evolve. Yeah.
Interesting.
If I may just add to that.
Yes.
Sure.
Brijesh, you want to go ahead?
No worries, Naveen.
Yeah. If I may just add to that, Anil and Srini made really valid points. And having taught in classrooms and having technology background, the way I see it is today a teacher is like a Durga with two hands. If we give the power of conversational AI, you're giving Durga with 10 hands. Out there, so that she can go out there and create a lot more experiences for students. So as a teacher, I really struggled to create personalized experiences for multiple students in a classroom. In a classroom of 30 students, there's only so much that you can do on there. But with the power of technology and especially conversational AI, I can tell, okay, let's say, Brijesh would need, this particular passages, let him do these 5 passages in Hindi, for example. Sorry, Brijesh, I know you're really good at Hindi, but yeah, man. Or Ashwini would get, let's say, 20 passages, 20 exercises in maths, let's say particular, algebra particular there. So I can set up all those and ensure monitoring. So to me, I see there is an image of Durga with 10 hands who's getting augmented, amplified with the power of something like conversational AI at her disposal. Just wanted to make that limited point. Yeah.
Even I would like to add something here, Devesh. One thing in my experience I've seen is basically the bots are not playing the role of a teacher. However, teachers have come up with certain fantastic resources which are available in different products. So the bots are definitely helping the students in connecting to those resources. So suppose I go to a particular product and I ask, give a voice command that I want to search a particular topic, let's say ray diagrams. So whatever resources pertaining to ray diagrams are available to me at a click of a button. So as a student, it makes my life very simple.
Correct.
So that is one thing that the bots are doing today, definitely in terms of exploring the whole product and exploring the whole content. And that's why, as I said, saving time for the students and of course, increasing productivity going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I would like to add one point here, so if I talk about the entire education sector, this goes from very small ticket size to very high ticket size. Okay. Especially when I talk about study abroad sector, right? It is not about just how much the student is paying, to the counselor or, how much time they're spending. Okay. When they go to the university, okay, it's a question of, they are 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. Okay. And not only that, they pay, 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs, 50 lakhs or 1 crore rupees also. Okay. So the way I see it, study abroad sector is more kind of like, buying a house. Okay. You do only once or twice in your life. Okay. It is not like regular, today you are, buying this bike and tomorrow you are changing or, day after tomorrow, you are basically buying another bike. Okay. So in our sector, which is a study abroad. Okay. This bots can play a important role up to a certain point, and after that you need a human intervention so that you can establish a good connection, you can give a peace of mind, and you can empathize with them. That's where basically conversational AI cannot basically beat humans. Okay, it is our peace of mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ashwini here. I think this is beyond a point. The chatbot has to give the control back to a human person, because the deeper conversations and some of the involved, and that's the human touch also brings a lot more comfort to the audience. So you can't take that away. But there is still a lot of work which can go in the design of chatbots, because there are so many improvements that we have done in last couple of years, which have led to better engagement for the student, and it reduces the need for a person to come in. So while it is good to have a person as a fallback, but in the end, the person is also not always the preferred medium for the student. they would, let's say it's a 24/7 availability, and the availability on the move, you can't have a human person or the right expert available all the time. So if you can resolve the query as much as possible through a chatbot, that's the best thing. And second is chatbot can be used to guide. And I think Naveen was pointing about the personalization bit. So if you can introduce the element of personalization in the chatbots, which is saying, if I understand you as a student, if I understand you, what your interests and preferences are, can I guide you through the chatbot with the personalized choices so that I reduce the need of a human person? Even though I know for a fact that we'll obviously need to have one as a fallback.
So, from what I'm able to understand from all these answers is that, we need to keep on, we need to make the chatbot more intelligent so that it is able to understand, what the kind of student or the customer it is engaging with. It is able to show them as a friend, mentor, guide, and a teacher. I mean, it can take them through if they need solutions to a particular question or a particular query. It can guide them to the resources of, for that query. So what is this process? I'll begin with you, Vivek, first. I mean, like, what is the process, to making this bot more intelligent? How are we doing that?
So I think the one thing that we learned over a period of time, and I was referring to my initial comments, was this metric in terms of how well is the assistant helping the student. And we resolved this as a positive feedback post the response we used to give. And the reason why we did this positive feedback is my learning from all the previous AI projects is that the moment you anchor on clicks and CTR and engagement parameters, there is a lot of noise and chance element in those metrics. But the moment you bring in an absolute metric, then you have a lot of robustness, and the direction is always right. The number moves up, it moves up for sure. So here, once we did that, then we started experimenting with what more we can do. One, bringing more profile information in the context. So what is my starting point on the conversation, right? When I actually initiate a conversation, is a chatbot. When the student clicks on, I want to chat, what is my opening statement? What do I actually offer as a basket, right? Or am I waiting for the input to come? Or I actually offer an intelligent guess at that point in time and navigate the person to the next stage. And in a way, if I can design my interface over a period of time, and then thereafter, you are always looking at, is your positive feedback going up, not going up? Then we started figuring out what specific kind of queries our positive feedback was not good. And then we said, maybe here the gap is missing in terms of the content being missing, or whether the whole intent understanding is missing. And then you start classifying queries where you are finding your feedback is poor. So the moment you have metric in place and the measurement in place, you can start segmenting customers, you can start segmenting intents, you can start segmenting contexts where you're not working with. So here, for example, in Shiksha, we segment the conversations for BTech, for MBA, BSc, BCom. So those are sort of a way of segmenting consumers. And then there is intents, whether the intent is on admissions or fees or reviews or how good a particular college is. So you have those intent segmentation, you have course segmentations, you have starting point segmentations, and then you have profile parameters of the students. So by you keep on improving each section, and then you have a threshold which is saying anything below this is not acceptable. So if it is not acceptable, you need to really work hard and fix it.
Interesting. Brijesh, I mean, what are the key metrics that you have kept for Quest Plus? I mean, when it comes to chatbots and how well they are performing?
So again, we are tracking it on two fronts. One is the consumption front of the student. So basically what happens is what time the students usually log in, then the bot recommends courses to them. Now the bot even tells them that you've done mathematics and science yesterday. Why don't you focus on the languages today because you haven't touched them? So there are certain consumption patterns that we are tracking on what the child is doing on the app, and then trying to give them further guidance on how basically they can go about studying. So it acts like a mascot, welcoming the student, helping the student. And basically on the sales front, of course, we track a lot of patterns. Again, what time the people are usually coming to our platform, what is the kind of questions that they are asking. So data analysis is something that we are doing very regularly, both on the sales front as well as consumption front. So this is helping us define behavioral patterns of the students and then give suggestions according to the students as well as the parents.
Interesting. Ashwini, what are the metrics that you, at Foreign Admit have kept, when it is about to understand, where you're getting the right pointers, where you're getting the right data, and, you're able to, focus on the comments of the audiences, of the customers.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, this study abroad is more kind of like a high ticket segment. Okay. So it is very, very important for us, that how much information the lead or a customer is, consuming on the website. So we track, the entire data of how much time they have spent on which page and all those things. Okay. And based on that, we assign a scoring rule to a particular lead. Okay. That is more on the sales side. And not only that, but then we basically take it to the next level by serving, extra information to those customers, so that we try to build a, empathy, with them. Basically, we try to provide more and more, information. We try to build a connection, or we try to give them a hook so that, they can be connected to us. So that is more on the, sales side, and more on the servicing side. We basically cater, how engaged, or we measure how engaged they are in the servicing part, how often they are, having meetings, and how often, they are connected with the counselor. And these are the two areas, where basically we are doing this.
Correct. Coming to you, Naveen, what are your thoughts, how do you define those metrics, when it comes to, like we discussed about, are the metrics working fine, but how do you define those metrics in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question, Devesh. Just to shape a context, we are in the business of personalization with schools. We work with schools and students across 20,000, more than 20,000 schools there. So for us, the obvious metrics are out there in terms of what are the situations out there, what is the resolution time happening out there. But what we understood, the power of chatbots and conversational AI is how much context, how much intelligence can you get to the conversation. That's why it's called conversational AI. So we look at it in terms of one metric, one key thing that we look at defining and want to track more and more is that how much of the student or the school's background information are we able to bring to address that query. So for example, if a student says that, let's say, what is the syllabus for maths that's there? What are the questions? How can I prepare for maths, the upcoming exam, let's say. We want to be able to use it, not just to say that, you can prepare, this is the syllabus that you can prepare, but just to go back and look at the past background of the student maths performance and be able to tell, okay, these are the areas that you can focus more in upcoming and going ahead there. It could be similarly for schools, the areas that they face. For example, a lot of schools face issues in academic planning. I'm sure Anil would know that, how do you plan your syllabus, time, table, all of that. So how much, and every year it's like a fresh effort that happens that, they need a lot of, paper timetables that go on. Okay, so many teachers are there, subjects, time periods of that. But if you can bring more and more intelligence in terms of how they had planned earlier and bring that to address the query, it would really, really matter to us. So for us, we look at, the personalization part, the context part of the previous history and bring that to address the problem rather than starting from scratch. So that's how that's a high quality metric for us that we are defining and tracking more and more.
Interesting. Anil, do you concur with the thoughts of Naveen, Brijesh, Vivek, and Ashwini on that analyzing data, understanding the customer preferences, giving them a personalized responses to each one, and making it reducing the kind of turnaround time when you respond to a student or a customer who is seeking service for it. It really helps. Do you concur with that idea?
Absolutely. So these are areas, I absolutely concur. See, the thing is, we too use data for personalization. I think that's where I think all of us agree on. So for instance, in study, or we define a success factors, how many students have been able to create a study plan. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about creating a study plan, also how many of them have been able to actually follow up and complete the goal. If not, they've not been able to, what are the factors that are coming in the way? So we do need the data points to take the right steps to ensure that our app also improves in terms of the experience. So that's these are all definitely value adds. And also in terms of using AI for nudges, nudging students to take the right steps to achieve their learning goals, right? So there are no questions in any of this line. So and the thing is about where are we drawing the limits, questions of ethics, how do we address that? These are the bigger questions, and I'm sure we'll find answers along the way. For example, I think the Turing test question itself was, can machines think, right? So, and not can they feel. So I think we got one aspect of the limit there, right there itself. Yeah.
Interesting. Shri, coming to you. So, while all these EdTech players, they define the metrics and they set the metrics, you work with a lot of players in the segment. So what has been your experience, and, what has been your experience when it comes to, apprehension from players, to deploy chatbots and to understand, that these are the kind of metrics that they can really help them analyze, the kind of traffic which is coming to them, make the life a little more easier, drive a lot of operational efficiency. So what are the first stage apprehensions, before opting for these bots?
Well, it's mainly the apprehensions that you face when any new form of technology comes and knocks at your doorstep. It's about, will it work? We're used to doing things in a certain way. Will our consumers respond to it? But I think one thing that all the industries have realized is that consumers are oftentimes like one generation ahead of business, because I think the reason why we're talking about conversational AI and messaging apps, chatbots, is because consumers have already adopted those, at least the messaging apps, and they've realized that they're doing so much in their life with that already. And you as a business are now trying to say that, okay, I will also live on your WhatsApp the way your friend does, and you can chat with me the way you chat with a friend. So that's the first thing that a lot of businesses have begun to realize after maybe having initial apprehensions. And it's always the digital natives or born in digital kind of companies who are quicker to adopt these technologies. But other companies which are sort of more steeped in a more traditional way of doing things, they take a little while longer. But eventually, I think everyone is sort of converging on the same thing. And secondly, in terms of metrics, I think like depending on those three dimensions I told you, the metrics are different. So if you're setting up a bot on WhatsApp, for example, to capture student inquiries or inquiries for your courses and programs, then the metrics are all around lead generation, the number of people who came in through the funnel, the number of people who completed the details, filled out the form, and all of that. So you have a bunch of, so what happens is these metrics become a part of the business metrics that you anyway manage if you're managing the business of education, right? And then there are metrics around student engagement, learner engagement, how many, or even from a business point of view, were you able to upskill, cross-sell or upsell, especially in the professional education space, where if someone took a course on digital marketing, were you able to upsell and increase the lifetime value to your business. And on the support side, of course, what was the percentage of queries that your bot was able to resolve before handing over to a live agent, right? So that's a very big metric that we track. So these metrics are not really new. You will anyway track those metrics, but bots and messaging apps sort of get added as another channel to what you're already doing as a business.
Interesting. Great, gentlemen. So, before I close the panel for the day, one question that, I want to ask to all of you actually, what are the new innovations, that you would like to see with bots in the near future? Brijesh, I begin with you first.
Yeah. So basically, before we move to that, I would just like to share with the audience that usually the usage of bot, people start thinking that, okay, implement this from day one tomorrow. So usually it doesn't happen that way. So before you embark upon an innovation, there are certain steps that I would advise the users to take care of, and then basically make sure that the innovations are happening after that. So one is, it can start off with being a virtual agent for you particularly, start basic inquiries and comments with the audience that you're basically engaging with. Then you start messaging with that particular thing. Then you interface the AI part of it, and then you move into the legacy part of it. Coming to the innovation, yes, because I come from an academic background, my point is very simple. How can children interact more and more with the bots? and make sure that they're available to them 24/7 as a substitute teacher. I will not call it a teacher per se straight away, because the teachers can't be replaced. That's the bottom line. Because now we've been following the data pattern, the study pattern of students, because some of them study late into the night, some of them study very early in the morning. So imagine you have an exam today at 10 o'clock, you're studying morning 5 o'clock. You don't have a teacher at your disposal. So how is it that the bot will be able to help you, giving an instant solution that point in time? So we are working towards that, So basically how it can play the role of a substitute teacher at the time of a help, at the time of a need, and your job is done. So that is what we are working towards in terms of innovation, in terms of academics. How can bots play an important role going forward?
Correct. Vivek, your thoughts on this?
I think the chatbots are very well established now. The question remains in terms of complexity of queries that we can handle. So in Shiksha, then we are now looking at from Shiksha assistant transitioning to become a Shiksha counselor. So there we are looking at building more depth content and more depth in terms of the queries and the complexity of queries that we can handle.
Interesting. Ashwini?
So I have like a lot of, I would say just like hypothetical things, that I have those in my mind. So number one is it's not hypothetical, but it's like it should be like focused on multi-language, because India is a country of diverse language, So first of all, we need to work on it. And one of my friend also is, working on this type of project. So that is like number one. And second thing is, that I have in my mind, which might be superficial, but audio bots, not only like chat bots, but, going to the next level, like here, I'm like asking, and, on the other side, somebody is, chatting, or bot is basically replying. Just like for an example, like WhatsApp, right? A lot of people use WhatsApp, for like typing, and, like a lot of people use it for, like recording their audio also, which is a great feature, right? And it has made our life easier. So similarly, like audio bots, is like next level of thing that I would like to see.
No, I just want to say that voice bots, I think he made a very good point that the next wave is the voice bot, where a lot of speech to text analytics and all of that is coming in, which will sort of bridge the gap further between people's preferences of communication and what the bot can say. I just wanted to do that. Sorry, Naveen. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So when I think in terms of personalization, which is our business and academic goal, I look at three things that where conversation AI can make a difference. One, if I'm with a friend, I don't spend my time texting. It's a lot more an audio thing. So number one, it has to be audio. Number two, when all of us we catch up and all, there's only so much time we speak in English. We speak in vernacular. I mean, India is a vernacular first out there, and majority of people use vernacular. So number two is the vernacular part. And number three, my friend knows my history. So as part of the innovations, I'm looking at these three things, how they can be combined: voice, vernacular, and the history. And these three can make a remarkable difference to our experience as we go ahead. So Srini, looking forward to a lot of innovation on these fronts.
Anil, what's your thoughts? I mean, on the adaptation of bots in the industry.
So I agree. So voice in local language is pretty important, top of the list. Other one that I would probably hope for is that, bots also help students communicate better. Because when you're communicating with the bot, you know that, it's not a person. So, sometimes students could be rude, bossy, because at the end of the day, they're going to get an answer from the bot. So whereas if it's being a real human being, that's not the case. So maybe little more evolved nature in which, bot could also correct the way you are communicating with it, and refusal to answer the question if you're rude, for example, and stuff like that. So a little more of those features, because, some of this influences children to pick up. I was reading an article about how children who interact more with Alexa, for example, become bossy at home. So there are real implications for this in the education space. Yeah.
Great. Srini, if you can shed some light on, what are the kind of next wave of, innovations, that we are looking in the bot space.
Yeah, like I was mentioning, I think the NLP or natural language processing models are evolving as we speak. And they're all evolving, especially in an Indian context, to handle not just the vernaculars, but also this very unique thing that we have called Hinglish or Kanglish and all the local languages mixed with English. So it just makes it a little bit more complicated. So that is the first step. That is, how do you the next step rather, that how effectively can you capture intent, and how can you deploy that intelligence across, something that is text based, something that's voice based. So that's also another dimension that's going to emerge. But I still feel that we are in that, if you look at the product, the adoption of conversational AI. So we are at that point, we're going to cross the chasm where we've gone through the early adopter phase, the early majority phase. And now we foresee that more and more businesses in education and in other places that will embrace this technology in a big way in the next couple of years.
Interesting. Before I wrap up, I want to take one audience question, which is pretty interesting actually, pertaining to the current scenario. It says that, how long do we actually see the life of, chatbots, especially when schools and all the institutions are opening up again. So, I think Srini, want to take it up first?
No, like I said, eventually what will happen is that bots and the more traditional methods of learning, especially in the education sector, will find a way to coexist. So even on this panel, I think we all agree that one will not replace the other. It probably makes it more
coexist.
The good qualities or the augmentation that is available will be used. But also once things normalize and children go back to school, etc., there is also always the scope for these timely nudges and some outside of classroom interactions, which a teacher might not have time for, that can be made possible with this technology. So the possibilities are really endless.
Right. Vivek, do you want to also take this up? Maybe you want to answer it?
See, my sense is that there will be some swing back to offline modes for sure. It will happen, which is all but natural. There is obviously fatigue of online learning, but in the end, the fact that so many millions of students have experienced online learning, there are benefits which they carry with them. So eventually you will settle on an equilibrium which will be far more towards online than it used to be before COVID. So there will be some return back to normal for sure. But there are benefits that both teachers and students have experienced. There is a lot of training which has happened for both teachers. A lot of teachers have now gotten trained. Their fear of technology has gone away. So there is going to be a far better adoption in the future is what we expect. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. It was really lovely interacting with you, and understanding, how the future of EdTech sector is, especially with the, conversational AI technology and chatbots, and, what are kind of implications in it and the new wave of innovations that we are going to see in this space. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us. And, it was really very interactive for the audiences, to seek your learnings and seek from your experiences. Thank you.